Okay, everybody, good afternoon. It's June 15th, obviously, 2022. This is a first restart meeting of the USNG Implementation Work Group. And to get the show rolling, here's the meeting schedule. 5 minutes of administrative stuff, then we'll do 30 minutes of updating everybody on what's happened about the creation of the U.S. National Grid Institute. Followed by roughly, 20 minutes of some USNGI related developments. And then for 15 minutes or so, if there's stuff folks would like to bring up from the floor, we're on our way. And then we'll wander through some new business, open discussion, and then the next IWG meeting listed down below and the adjournment time. So with that, I'm Steve Swayze. The, in theory, elected, well, I guess it's actually reality now, the elected chair of the USNG Institute, and what that beast is all about, the organizational update on it, is that for approximately the last, I don't know, it's almost approaching a full year, a select number of folks that are sincerely interested in trying to see better promotion of U.S. National Grid across both the civilian and military sector for emergency response purposes have been meeting and discussing the approaches that would potentially work best for the creation of that kind of effort. And out of that discussion, what was decided was to create the U.S. National Grid Institute. And then the next step was in making an effort to try to decide what should that structure look like. And what was landed on was the idea of using a concept that is endorsed as a approach by the IRS known as fiscal sponsorship. And so fiscal sponsorship allows basically for a project like what we're talking about here to have its nonprofit training wheels put in place. It gets a chance to operate more or less as a nonprofit, but without having the paperwork filed and not having the restrictions placed on it to do, for instance, the IRS tax filing. And the way that works is the project gets carried on the books of an existing nonprofit, and then any donations that are sent to the nonprofit or project, probably would be a better way to use the word there, are then passed through for the use by the project. So the IRS requires that a contract exists which defines that relationship. So that's kind of the check in the block here. So what did I do? Forget to share the screen? Okay. I'm wildly assuming you can see my screen. Is that in fact the case? Going once, going twice.
I see your screen.
Okay. Thank you for confirming that. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Yeah,
okay.
You're good.
So who we ended up approaching, and of course, since I already wear the hat as being the executive director over at ShareGeo, which has been involved in this process for a long time and has a similar mission, the decision was made that we would make the approach to ShareGeo. And so ShareGeo agreed, its board of directors voted to agree to accept the U.S. National Grid Institute as a project of the nonprofit, provided four things happened. First, that there would be a minimum of a 3-person board elected to manage the initial operations of the project. Second, that the project board of directors would have in place already, even though it would not be required by law, but to have in place a signed set of articles of incorporation, which would be appropriate for filing in the state of Minnesota. And then the project board of directors would have also put in place a set of bylaws for the management of the project as its own entity. And then finally, that IRS requirement that there was a signed contract, in fact, in place. So as several of the folks that are on this call are aware of, Those steps were completed in early March, in which in fact has allowed the U.S. National Grid Institute to come into existence. And if you'd like to learn more about this fiscal sponsorship arrangement, there's a link on the project description right here at ShareGeo. So all you got to look for is, go to news at ShareGeo and then look for the extended fiscal sponsorship to the National Grid Institute. Read about it here. And Al, if you could please, could you mute your mic? Thank you very much. Hey, Stud. Mike, would you please, sir?
Okay. I don't know how to do that.
Here, I'll do it for you. There you go. Okay. So that's the rascal. It's known as fiscal sponsorship. You can go there, you can take a look at it and the rest of it. So again, this might be a little bit old terrain for some folks, but I just wanted as a kind of a backdrop. Well, you create this thing. Well, what's the intent? The U.S. National Grid Institute's mission is to promote awareness and use of the U.S. National Grid Standard as the nation's primary geolocation coordinate system and language of location for emergency response, data analysis, asset management, and public mapping. And each of the folks that participated, the work group that put this together can specifically talk to each of those different elements. There's folks that have expertise in each of them, and then describe why the use of the U.S. National Grid is most appropriate for those kind of 4 different breakout things. As filed in the documents, the purpose of this corporation and why it says corporation, if you're not familiar with it, every entity that operates that has a charter, whether it's an LLC or whether it's operating under, name of, or whether it's an actual corporation or nonprofit, they're all called corporations. And that's how the paperwork looks when it's filed. But I just want to be clear, there's no intent here of trying to drive towards being a corporation. It is, in fact, the idea of spinning up effectively the opportunity to make a decision as to whether to press forward in creating a nonprofit or to leave it something in between, or maybe abandon it completely if it looks like it's too hard. So the purposes of this corporation are to promote emergency response, preparedness, emergency response, and public safety, and other public benefits through the awareness, understanding, and effective use of the U.S. National Grid Federal Geolocation Standard, to facilitate use of the U.S. National Grid among units of government, non-governmental organization, institutes of learning, public corporations, and private enterprise for the common good, and to provide technical expertise, research, facilities, education, and funding to encourage, the adoption of the U.S. National Grid. So that's the background of what we're trying to do. And in framing, okay, so now you got this thing, and now you kind of have the charter, the direction you want to go in. So what does this next piece look like in terms of, well, what are, kind of where are you going to head initially here? So initially the structure, and you can define a nonprofit as being an entity with members or without members. So the initial structure, plan of operation, is to operate without members. The U.S. National Grid Institute officers and acting board, in the time that occurred after the bringing together and formalizing the relationship with ShareGeo as a project under it, other individuals were subsequently invited to participate on the board. And so that board number increased from the initial 3 as the founding members of the board to 7 as it currently sits. By documents, we're allowed to grow up to 11. So the U.S. National Grid Institute and the IWG positions are basically reversing themselves, in that the U.S. National Grid Implementation Work Group created the U.S. National Grid Institute, and going forward, the Implementation Working Group is going to be the Please check your mute. Thank you. Will effectively become the operating arm of the U.S. National Grid Institute. So all documents, as I indicated previously, have been completed to create a self-standing nonprofit, except for the formal filing of the articles of incorporation. They're already done. They're sitting in a drawer. The filing of the completed bylaws, they're sitting in a drawer. Activating the reserve name, and the name has been reserved already. Requesting a tax ID number, which takes about 30 minutes tops, and then completing and filing the latest form for the IRS to complete or to bring into existence a nonprofit. That document has changed substantially from the time that Shared Geo was founded 13 years ago, in that it is now just 3 pages long. And when Shared Geo is created, and as if anybody else is on the call here that's been involved in the stand-up of a nonprofit, under the old criteria that the IRS used, it was a 45 some page document that you had to complete with, supporting documents that showed that, no kidding, the what you're claiming to be a need in the community was in fact real, and the rest of it. Where we are right now is, this was the vision that in the May meeting of the board of directors was agreed to. What we would be happy with if after 1 year we could say the following things have been completed by the Institute. First would be to be positioned for a actual first elected board of directors. So by the bylaws, the Institute is set up so that as a board member comes onto the board, or a person is selected to be brought onto the board, they are signing up for a 3-year term. Well, obviously you don't want everybody rotating at once. So we have to set that up in a way so that over time, we will have the opportunity to have, if you will, an election every year, which sequentially replaces 1/3 of the board. So we are working towards the end of the year, and I'll explain that here in a little bit, to get ourselves positioned so that we will get into that elected rotation approach. The second bullet down there is talking about having a functioning organization, both administratively and operationally. And we believe the operational components amount to having a person who will stick up their hand and say they want to run the outreach committee, somebody that wants to run the technical committee, and somebody that wants to run the training committee. In each of those instances, there's a caretaker in those positions for the time being. And as the effort grows over time, we're looking for people that want to engage and willing to step forward and hook into those pieces. Creation of nationwide database. I'll talk about that a little bit further into the slides here. A rep for each FEMA region, a consistent look and feel, professionalization of how we are presenting ourselves, and then our website in place, a work site in place, quarterly large group meetings. So effectively, we're trying to get back on track from where we were before we took the break, to try to figure out how to do a better job of moving this effort forward. Ability to take donations, and then position from transitioning from organization building. So this first year, we're looking at organization building, to ongoing encouragement and implementation through outreach, technical support, and training. So here's your board of directors. Myself, I serve as the chair for a 3-year term. Randy Knipple will be there for 2 years, and BJ Kolstead as treasurer for 1 year. So that's the start of the rotational effort within the officer part. And what we've decided to do is to leave the initial at-large board of directors, Georgiana Strode, Al Studd, Mike Core, and Fennis Reed, with a 1-year term. And we'll look at determining how we want to stagger elections for replacement there as we approach the end of the fiscal year, which is the same as calendar year. And by the bylaws as they currently exist, towards the end of the year is when we conduct the election for replacement members of the board of directors. We also have two individuals that are kind of waiting in the wings. We always want to keep, if we don't want to bring in even numbers onto a board of directors, because that sets yourself up for a tie vote if there's a topic that is very what do I want to call it, divisive or controversial. And so you always want to try to bring onto a board of directors two people at once, and we just haven't been able to get things lined up to bring Ron Williams from Cherokee County and Bernard Catliantano from out in California onto the board, but we're working to get there. The functional parts of how we view things will be operating for the first year is that oversight and governance team, the board of directors, officers operate on behalf of the board of directors when the entire board of directors is not available. So that's the chair, secretary, and treasurer. And then you see down below kind of the functional pieces. You have to have, on the left-hand side, you have to have an element to functionally exist, to, operate as an organization in the first place. And that's the admin, communications, IT, outreach. And then you got the mission execution piece, which is the technical chair and the training chair. So right now, as I indicated, in all those positions, you more or less have a caretaker chair that's serving in those positions. Randy Knipple as the technical chair, and BJ Kolstead as a training chair. And I've taken on since the first effort over the next 6 months or so is going to be about building connections and contacts, that sort of thing. We've made the effort to kind of put that in my wheelhouse for the time being, but eventually see that spinning off to be its own thing, that outreach piece. The current contact database, we started with 20 some people in it originally, and over time built it up to 42, and then really made a dramatic stab at trying to connect with anybody that has interest in U.S. National Grid. And right now it sits at 203, and we hope to keep building that to build a wave, if you will, of people that are aware of the issue and connect on a local level. The decision that the working group made about how that database should be set up was to make it sortable on 3 different criteria. The criteria that can sort by, and this comes from past experience in trying to set up training events, you really need to have an ability to target by region. And so what we've, for instance, decided to do was to use the FEMA regions as the breakout for that element of criteria, and then use generalized occupation. So is an individual an educator? Are they a part of the emergency service sector, geospatial? And, they have a foot in both worlds. And then we've got kind of a cats and dogs, which has got some miscellaneous decision makers and some advocates. And then there's a couple of folks in there that, although they're primarily trails people, they're really passionate about U.S. National Grid and what can be done to move that element forward. And then the third element is trying to classify people in terms of what sort of real involvement are they going to have? Are they, no kidding, roll up their sleeves folks on the board of advisors, board of directors? Are they sort of a well of knowledge? Talbot Brooks would be a perfect example, that they would make more sense of being, classified as an advisor. Bench, are they folks that have indicated in the past that they're interested in engaging, but we've really never effectively until now had an approach which will channel those kinds of efforts. And then last but not least, are they folks that just want to combine, find out occasionally, hey, what are you guys, what are you guys up to? So, yeah, give me a second. Oh, it's a spam call. I think they're trying to find out if I need more insurance for my car. So anyway, it'll stop here in one more ring. So if you're not familiar with it, the regional rep, the concept of what we're thinking about, this is kind of a two-edged sword. Here are the FEMA regions. And one of the problems we've had in the past, for instance, the guys in Washington, D.C. are very well connected, across some of the boards and institutions there for trying to do the things that they're doing in terms of inserting U.S. national grid into directives that go out on how money is spent and things of that nature. But they've never really felt like they've had, if you will, a collective of other individuals in the area. So this is an opportunity. For instance, in building this contact database, lo and behold, we've determined there's 16 people in that region. And maybe, through some sort of a development of a localized to that FEMA region, build some momentum across those 16, maybe connect with the FEMA rep for the area, or I should say the FEMA's office for the area, that kind of thing. So the double-edged sword here is that it's sort of like chapters of organizations. You have a board of directors that runs the main entity, but then some of these efforts that in the outlying areas kind of start taking off on their own. And so this one we're going to watch and see how it develops, but we are interested in finding if there is someone who would like to serve as a rep for a FEMA region, it to be nothing more than a belly button to, if you will, pass along information on a call list, occasionally get together with others that are in the region, either Zoom call or in person, and maybe look at efforts that can be focused within the region to move things along. So if you're interested in that kind of a thing, by all means, please shoot me an email and we can go from there. And I'll circle back to my email here in a minute. And then the consistent look and feel thing, the logos are approved, as you can see here on the screen. There has been a bank account established with actually money is starting to flow into it. We have this dedicated Zoom account through March of 2023, dedicated phone number. Web hosting has been set up at HostGator, and it's done. Mike Core, myself, everybody that's on this call that's been here for a while has heard me flap my gums for eons about getting the website up, but that's going to be the thing that ties everything together. And we've also got dedicated email and set up to go into MailChimp and push out of there if we need to. So here's the website idea that needs to be transitioned. We have the backside, which has been the coordination site, and the stuff to put up the website's been positioned, and it's a matter of getting in there and rolling up the sleeves and making it happen. Okay, scheduled quarterly meetings. Get out your pen and paper, and I think I fell on my sword massively with the time for today's event. And so for the folks that are out there, I think we agreed actually to 2 p.m., but I need to publish this in Central Time because my brain does not work across time zones very well, even though I have a past history that would suggest otherwise. But is 2 p.m. a reasonable for the board members that are here? 2 p.m. Central, is that what we should move our meeting time to? Al, will that work better for you? I know it'll work better for Randy.
Trying to figure it out. You're talking 2 p.m. Eastern. That's fine.
No, it'd be 3 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, that's probably better. I can support that.
You can, okay. And I know Randy needs 2 p.m. Georgiana, are you good?
Yes, I'm good. Thanks.
Fennis?
Nothing for me here.
I'm sorry, did you say is it good for you?
Yep. Either of those times will work.
Either one works. Okay. BJ's at the hospital. Randy, I already know the circumstance there. Ron, are you on the call? Unknown. And I know Bernard could not make it today. So I'm going to shift this officially to 2 p.m. And for anybody that would like to, so that's 2 p.m. Central. So ignore the 1 p.m. Central up here. And the dates to get us back on a quarterly schedule will be September 28th of obviously 2022 and January 18th. Scribble them down. And so that this thing isn't short fused in the future, I'm going to send out a meeting announcement, and that will be pegged to your calendar, and we'll go forward from there. Then I mentioned the issue of being able to donate. And so what's been set up is a donation site on what's called Give Minnesota, and you can just type in Give MN and you'll get there. And if you go up to the search function up there and click on it and type in USNGI, lo and behold, you will have a screen that pops up that looks something like this. And you can donate online. So this money goes into a dedicated account, and ShareGeo will remove the money out of the account because it's under ShareGeo's master account, and then pass it along into a dedicated account for USNGI that your treasurer, BJ Colstead, has control, access, visibility on, whatever. And then the final element here is to build outreach, and the elements of that are rehab elements of the U.S. National Grid Information Center. We'll continue to build out the USNG Institute YouTube channel, and last but not least, do a better job of integrating some of the elements of social media so that that's available. And with that, I'm going to come up for air for a minute and see if there's any questions about the stand-up of the U.S. National Grid Institute, or if you got any comments about dumb idea, good idea, whatever. Going once, going twice. So Dave, I'm going to call on you. You just sent me a note saying in the future, it might be better to want the donate page not to be state specific. Yeah. Okay. Good point, because you're right with Give Minnesota. Do you have any suggestions on one that's more generic nationally? I don't want to use GoFundMe or any of that other stuff. Not hearing anything. Okay, so I scribble that down as a note, not state specific. You're right.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, got you loud and clear, Dave. Go ahead.
Maybe just something so people in Georgia would be more willing to pay something that's U.S. National Grid specific.
Yeah. Yep. Understood. I'll take a look at trying to see if there's a way to move us over to something that I trust won't ream us for fees. And yeah, I'll do it for sure. Got it. Thank you, Dave. Okay. With that, we are darn near right on schedule. And so the next 20 minutes or so, I'd like to talk about some things that have been going on in terms of technology development. So you got awareness of stuff that's coming down the line. Many of you are familiar that with the idea that there's been a download page for U.S. National Grid map books that's existed for darn near a decade, I think. And it has gotten, I would say, dusty would be a minimum description. More like archaic would probably be a better description. And so there has been an effort, and we've talked about it to some degree in the past, to upgrade this, fix it, and deliver it in a way where other individuals, this approach in the past has used the concept of we hosted a shared geo server hosted the map books that were provided to us. And it always seemed to us that the better way to do that would be to have some sort of an application which would allow map books to be uploaded versus just being out there, on our servers. So what has been underway is a project that has and Randy, are you with us yet?
Yes.
So I'll let you drive from this point. I'll
Okay.
click slides and you can yap.
Okay. Well, just to expand on what Steve just said, it wasn't so much about uploading maps. It was about registering a map series. So me, Dakota County, as a map producer, or let's say it's actually the Minnesota Geospatial Advisory Council Emergency Preparedness Committee as a map publisher, creating maps for the state of Minnesota, would be able to essentially register those maps. Well, we've already found a place to put them. We create the maps, we publish the maps, and we just want to register them with an application that can be kind of a holding place or a presentation of any other map series that have been published. And so the whole idea is that I'm able to publish maps someplace on the web and then register them with this application so anybody else can do the same thing. And it just goes through a simple form like this. So the name is would be my name as a map publisher, an email address so that I can be contacted, and then a map series URL. And this just goes to a URL that describes all of the maps in my map series. And it is, as it says in the prompt there, a GeoJSON file. Those are the techies in the crowd. JSON is a computer readable form of data that is common on the web. A GeoJSON is a variation of that includes coordinates. And so what this means is that I provide the URL of a GeoJSON file that I have created that has nothing more than a map name and a URL that points to the map. And that gets read into a database. And then the map application reads from that database, which points to these GeoJSON files all over the world on the web. And in real time goes out and grabs those GeoJSON files, draws all of the polygons. And then when you zoom in, it's actually where it's gray there, light gray and dark gray. Those are actually polygons that represent the map extents. And so when you zoom all the way in, you can click and you'll get the hyperlink that I provided to the map that I created. Yes, you can see those over there. And so you can have overlapping map series. You can have, really maps and map books. I just simply need to provide some kind of a polygon that represents the extents of the map or the map book, and then the URL that points to that someplace on the web. So we didn't have to worry about uploading, gigabytes of map PDF files. The assumption is we'll have a place to put them, or they will exist someplace on the web. Is this your last? Oh, okay. USGS Total Series. So one idea here. So the previous slide showed all of the U.S. National Grid maps. I think some of you are familiar. We've really come up with a de facto standard for U.S. National Grid based maps based on 1 kilometer squares and 10 kilometer squares. 10 kilometer squares are 1 to 24,000 scale, and it really represents it's based on the extents of the 10 kilometer squares of the U.S. National Grid. However, the U.S. Topo maps from the USGS are National Grid compliant. So there is an overlap between the 1 to 24,000 scale 10K maps and the USGS quarter quadrangle maps, which are based on, I think they're 1.5 minute by 1.5 minute squares or rectangles. Somebody help me on that. I don't recall what it is. But anyway, these maps are 1 to 24,000 scale, but they're based on geographic extents, and they have historic names, which in a lot of ways today don't mean as much as they used to. So, there's some archaic parts of what the USGS has done with these maps in their naming convention and the extents, but they are U.S. National Grid compliant. And you'll notice, if you can see down on the bottom in the margin there, you can see the grid zone designation box. There's a north arrow there with the declination. There is a statement there that says what 100,000 or what 100,000 kilometer or 100,000 meter grid square it's in, and so on. The USGS has all these out on the web. If anybody has gone out there and tried to get them, it's rather cumbersome. I'm sorry. It works, but it's rather cumbersome. But all the map extents are very easy to create. Those all exist out there on the web. All of the maps are already out there. So it was really pretty easy to incorporate those into this application by just creating that GeoJSON file that included the extents of all the maps with the hyperlink that goes to the maps on the USGS website. So it works well in tandem with the US National Grid maps, but it certainly works if the US National Grid maps don't exist. Now the data set was very large. I'm not sure how many hundreds of thousands of quadrangles there are for the entire US. It would have overloaded this app. What we were able to do is really very simply break that down just by attribution that was on those polygons provided by the USGS and break it down by state. So we can publish essentially a map index for the US topos state by state. And we've put a few out there. You saw them on the previous slide. You can see we put in Iowa, we put in South Dakota, Missouri, Illinois, Georgia are all in there right now. We have those for every state. We're going to look at how this impacts the performance of the application, potentially host it as a separate map. But I think the main point here is that it's very easy to just create a GeoJSON file that points to maps that already exist on the web. We'll be doing this with other maps that are already published that we know about. State of Missouri has some US National Grid maps. North Carolina has some National Grid maps as well. So we can generate the map indexes to the maps that already exist on the web. And you have one place to go to find them. And that's the real message, as well as the message that USGS has US National Grid maps for the entire country at 1 to 24,000 scale. And not everybody really realizes that. And that's both air photo and topo.
Okay,
Good enough?
thank you, Randy.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Randy? Okay. The USNGapp.org, for many years, the Iowa folks have beat us up about, hey, you need the map function in here. And again, I don't know if this is a broken record from last time, but the beta version exists out there. We're waiting for the lawyers to get back to us to finish the license piece. So like if you click over here on info, there's a license in there, but it's going to be dramatically lengthened and upgraded, if you will, in terms of that discussion that's in there, just to make sure all the bases are covered. But through the function over here, this lookup, you can also do a copy, which in theory should be able to allow you to copy the coordinate off here and drop it into the text function of your phone, and away you go. So the lookup, it's pretty rudimentary, but it works well. Your whatever location is on the front side can be dropped in here, and you can see it on Bing, Google, whatever. And if you jump in here. Let's say you just heard something over the radio. You can type it in right there and off you go by clicking on Google Maps, for instance. It'll show you where that is on Google Maps. So that's the work that's, if you will, sitting on the shelf. And as soon as the lawyers say we're good to go, it'll be on the street. Also, last time we got together, I did the discussion about the fact that the rewrite of the standards and installation guide is well underway. We're somewhere in the neighborhood of 78 pages on this beast because we're putting everything we can think of into this so that the knowledge about how to go about the emergency location marker build effort, what the standards are in productions of signs. We're trying to eliminate some issues of folks either putting out an RFP that doesn't align with what we've learned over the last decade with the appropriate way to approach this. And the reason why you're seeing two different symbols here is the original one has more or less was on a PowerPoint, and it was like 4 slides long. And we started to make the move at Shared Geo to update it there, but it is going to be largely dependent when we get the document in its final form as to whether we bring it forward from the U.S. National Grid Institute or bring it forward from Shared Geo. That will be a decision for the board of directors at both organizations to make a decision on. And what we're interested in trying to do is trying to use this as the jump off point for an application with the Federal Highway Administration to bring it into their standardized signage manual. Because once it's codified there, it will effectively have the impact of a federal standard. And so that's the work that's going on with that beast and why it is the way it is. And so Jesse, if he's still on the call here, probably can jump in, because to the degree that we've been working across the spectrum of a number of organizations across the past decade, we've seen lots of different issues emerge, and we've tried to describe each one so that when other people run into it, that they have a point of reference. For instance, here's an example showing 3 levels of blue. And believe it or not, this dark one over here and this light one over here, they're all in the range of what's known as traffic control blue. And I even show you the diagram down here that was done by the Minnesota State Department of Transportation Spectrometry Lab. They went in and did the analysis on this. So it gives you the wide range of what color that blue actually can be. And so the bottom line of what has emerged out of that is what you really want to use is the traffic control color blue that gives the best warranty assurance for production of that sign. And so as the laminate is produced and placed on one of these emergency location markers, different vendors have different ink cartridges, and that range or that chemical composition for that color blue at that particular manufacturer, you want to align that with whatever that manufacturer thinks best. And then here you can see example. Here's a one that was developed by Rhino. It's a post that can be put in the ground, and it's got this flexible bend away. We did some developmental work here for Cobb County. You can see both a large version ELM for a lake system in northern Cobb County, and then also how to retrofit the standard Carcinite 3x. This is a 3x5 inch, and a Carcinite post is 3 inches wide. And Jesse, is there anything you want to jump in and mention here, about ELMs?
I guess I don't have much to add, but we have developed, we've expanded on the standards working with you guys in Cobb County, and there's probably 5 standard elms that have been installed there. But no, that's about all I have to add.
Yeah, so Jesse has been the leader of the effort in Cobb County from the standpoint of putting the ELMs into the field, and Jennifer Lana at the Cobb County GIS department, an absolute just a dynamo in trying to move their project forward. And then Dave Abashi, who's on the call today, has been the man in the field making things happen there. So he's part of their park rangers that patrol the extensive trail system, beautiful trail system that Cobb County has put in place. It's a county just outside of, I should say, it's a metro county of Atlanta. Bayfield, Sawyer, and Dane counties. In each case, Dane is just getting ready to put up their first ELMs in the county, and that's the state capital. And then there's also an effort ongoing in Bayfield and Sawyer, and that's the site of North America's largest cross-country ski event. It's called the Birkebeiner, and they're putting the ELM system in on that trail system. And as you heard earlier on check-in, we got a couple of folks here from Oneida County, and they have some interest in what's going on with that also. Last but not least, I think, well, maybe that's a lie, but the ELM manufacturing base continues to expand. Every one of these organizations here in some form or fashion, the 2 in yellow, I was hoping BJ Kolstead could talk about it, but she's been working hard with both of these organizations to bring them online and to have the ability to produce ELMs. And then we know for a fact there's several mom and pop shops out there that have been cranking away on getting US National Grid markers developed and available for them. And just a quick reminder, Shared Geo has a virtual booth which is entirely focused on US National Grid. It's a good light resource versus wandering into the USNG Center. Everything is on one page. And if you're looking for something of that nature to pass along to another person in the discussion, please give that consideration. Okay, so we are at the end of that. Is there anything that anyone would like to add to that discussion? Going once, going twice, gone. Okay, so developments from the floor. That is more or less, I was kind of hoping that our Washington State contingent would be on board, because he also, and Maryland also have some interesting things to usually pass along, but it looks like they're not with us today. But I'll open the floor. Al, I think you're headed up to New York City, is it, for your next workshop? Is that correct? Going once, going twice. Al, you still there? Apparently not. Okay. Anything else from the floor? Going once, going twice, gone. Well, we're going to get done early today. Any new business? Hearing none.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
With regard to that map interface that we were talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've actually set a target for deploying that, but what's your sense for when everybody might be able to take a look at that?
My sense is we could probably do it within the next week. I went through and I got a list of about 18 tweaks I think ought to be made. And I wanted to have another discussion based on the last time you and Nicole talked. It wasn't clear to me in that exchange as to whether or not what her concern was or what your concerns were had been resolved.
Yeah, well, the one thing was getting it actually deployed. And we could do like a soft release to this group
Yeah.
and get their feedback as well.
Yeah, I think that's where we want to go.
Okay, so maybe we can just at this point mention that we would like to engage everybody on this call. Send the link out once it is available. Send the link out so that all of you could engage and provide some feedback.
That'd be great. The question is, do we have the players to do that? So, for instance, Karen Clark, would you be willing to go look at it?
For sure.
Okay. Same thing across the board is, rather than picking on people, it's, we'll get your emails and go forward from there. I've got a list of who's here today. And unless somebody's got objections, we'll be sending it out and you folks can take a look at it. Thank you. Yep. Good point, Randy. Thanks. Anything else from the floor? Going once, going twice, gone. Okay. Open discussion. We're going to be done half an hour early today, it looks like, because we are. Let me circle back and ask, from what you've seen today, are there any questions or are there any thoughts about what has been put forward about the fact we have created the Institute and are marching forward on the idea of trying to bring it into more formal existence? Is that help? Let me ask it this way. With something of that nature in existence, would that be something that would be helpful to you? Okay. All right. Moving right along. Well, there's the open discussion. I got pie in my face. Here. Okay. Scribble them down. I'll be sending them out as formal invite. Next meeting's Wednesday, September 28th. Scratch the 1 p.m. It'll be 2 p.m. And I never did ask for a motion to open, so I guess a motion to close is pointless. And with that, thank you for stopping by. I apologize for the short notice on the meeting announcement. Again, something that will be solved going forward. Any last minute comments, thoughts? All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Appreciate it.